Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Today, I want to have a heart-to-heart conversation with you about relationships. Specifically, the warning signs that might save you years of heartache, confusion, and regret. I've walked this path myself. I've stumbled, fallen, and learned lessons the hard way. And today, I'm sharing these insights with you not from a place of bitterness, but from a place of wisdom earned through pain. When I was a young man, I believed love conquered all. I believed that with enough dedication, enough sacrifice, any relationship could work. But time and experience have taught me that some relationships aren't meant to be saved. They're meant to teach us what we deserve. They're meant to show us the red flags we've been colorblind to. The most dangerous traps in life are the ones we walk into with our eyes wide open, believing we're heading toward happiness. I've counseled thousands of men over the years who ignored warning signs, who dismissed their intuition, who silenced that small voice inside saying, something isn't right here. And I promised myself that if I could prevent even one person from making the same mistakes, I would speak up. So today we're discussing 5 specific phrases, 5 statements that when uttered by a woman in your life should cause you to pause, reflect, and potentially walk away. These aren't casual comments. They're revelations of character, glimpses into future behavior, windows into how she perceives you and the relationship. Before we begin, I want to clarify something important. This isn't about condemning anyone. It's not about painting with a broad brush or suggesting that people can't change. Rather, it's about recognizing that when someone tells you who they are, you should believe them the first time. It's about honoring yourself enough to establish boundaries that protect your dignity, your purpose, and your peace. I remember sitting across from a man, tears streaming down his face, as he described the decade he'd spent trying to prove himself worthy to a woman who had told him from the beginning that she wasn't sure he was ambitious enough for her. 10 years of striving, of abandoning his own dreams to chase a validation that never came. 10 years he couldn't get back. That's why this message is so urgent. That's why I'm speaking directly to you today with the same intensity I would use if you were my own brother, my own son. Because time is the one resource we can never replenish, and spending it in the wrong relationship is a cost too high to bear. So let's begin with the first statement. If a woman tells you, I need you to prove your love to me constantly, walk away. Love isn't a perpetual trial where you must continuously demonstrate your worthiness. Real love doesn't demand constant proof. It offers consistent presence. When someone requires you to repeatedly prove your devotion through tests, grand gestures, or emotional hurdles, they're revealing a bottomless need that you'll never be able to fill. I've seen men empty their bank accounts buying gifts, compromise their values, sacrifice their friendships, all to prove a love that should have been accepted as genuine from the start. But here's the devastating truth. When someone doesn't believe in your love without proof, no amount of evidence will ever be enough. There was a time in my own life when I thought love was measured by what I was willing to endure, by how much I could give despite receiving little in return. I would jump through hoops, rearrange my entire life, just to demonstrate that my feelings were real. But all that proving didn't strengthen the relationship, it weakened my sense of self. Real love doesn't constantly question your intentions. It doesn't require you to earn it anew each day. It's built on trust, not tests. On acceptance, not auditions. On seeing you clearly, not suspiciously. Now, there's an important distinction here. Healthy relationships do involve reassurance. They involve showing up, being reliable, demonstrating through actions that your words have meaning. But that's different from being with someone who fundamentally doesn't trust the authenticity of your feelings, who makes you feel like you're perpetually on trial for a crime you haven't committed. If you find yourself constantly justifying your love, defending your intentions, or performing to prove your worth, pause. Ask yourself, is this the foundation I want to build the rest of my life upon? Is this how love is supposed to feel? The woman who is right for you will never make your love feel insufficient. She might need reassurance during difficult times. That's human. But she won't make you feel like your love itself is under investigation, requiring evidence beyond what should be apparent in how you treat her day after day. Moving on to the second statement, if a woman tells you, my past relationships were all with terrible men, but they were never my fault, proceed with extreme caution. Now, let me be crystal clear. I am not suggesting that victims of genuinely abusive relationships are responsible for what happened to them. Abuse is always the fault of the abuser, period. But there's something revealing about a person who has a long history of failed relationships and takes no ownership whatsoever in the patterns. When someone presents themselves as perpetually blameless, as the recurring victim of one terrible partner after another, they're showing you something significant about how they process relationships. They're demonstrating an inability to self-reflect, to recognize their own contributions to relationship dynamics, to learn and grow from past experiences. We've all had relationships that didn't work out. We've all been hurt, disappointed, perhaps even betrayed. But emotional maturity requires us to ask, what was my part in this? What can I learn here? How might I choose differently or behave differently in the future? Someone who frames every past relationship as simply happening to them, with them playing no active role, is likely to approach a relationship the same way. When inevitable conflicts arise, they'll see themselves solely as the wounded party, never as a contributor. They'll expect you to make all the adjustments, all the compromises, because in their narrative, they're always the one being wronged. I recall counseling a couple where the woman had described all 7 of her previous relationships as ending because her partners were emotionally unavailable. Yet in our sessions, it became clear that she had impossible standards, moved goalposts constantly, and pulled away whenever genuine intimacy developed. She couldn't see her own pattern because she had crafted a narrative where she was merely responding to others' deficiencies, never creating situations herself. Listen carefully when someone describes their relationship history. Are there lessons they've learned about themselves? Are there patterns they've recognized in their own choices or behaviors? Can they speak with nuance about complex situations, acknowledging that most relationship struggles involve 2 people's contributions? The woman who is right for you will have enough self-awareness to recognize her own patterns. She'll have done the internal work to understand how she participates in relationship dynamics. She won't view herself as a passive character in her own life story. She'll recognize her agency, her choices, her responsibility for her own happiness. The third statement that should cause you to walk away is, I don't really have any close female friends because women are too much drama. This seemingly casual comment actually reveals volumes about how a person views others, particularly those of the same gender. It suggests a concerning mindset. The problem isn't me, it's an entire gender. When a woman tells you she can't maintain friendships with other women, she's inadvertently revealing something significant. Either she truly does struggle to connect with half the population, which indicates limited empathy and social skills, or she's experienced conflicts with other women that she blames entirely on them rather than seeing her own contributions, which indicates a lack of self-awareness. Healthy friendships require many of the same skills as healthy romantic relationships: communication, compromise, respect for boundaries, emotional support, and conflict resolution. Someone who has no sustained, meaningful friendships with members of their own gender may lack these fundamental relationship skills. Furthermore, this statement often reflects a competitive rather than collaborative view of other women. It can indicate someone who sees other women primarily as rivals rather than potential allies, a perspective that often stems from insecurity and can manifest in controlling behaviors within a romantic relationship. I once knew a man whose girlfriend insisted that he distance himself from female colleagues, female friends, even female family members. Her justification was always the same. Women are manipulative. They're trying to take you from me. What he initially mistook for passionate love was actually possessiveness, rooted in her inability to trust not just him, but an entire gender. Her lack of female friendships wasn't the badge of honor she claimed. It was a warning sign of her difficulty connecting authentically with others. The woman who is right for you will have meaningful relationships with people of all genders. She'll have friends who've witnessed her growth, who hold her accountable, who celebrate her successes, and support her through failures. These connections indicate emotional health, the ability to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics, and a secure sense of self that doesn't feel threatened by others. Our fourth warning sign comes when a woman tells you, if you really loved me, you would know what I want without me having to tell you. This statement reveals a dangerously unrealistic expectation that has shipwrecked countless relationships. It suggests that mind reading is a requirement for love, that genuine care means intuiting another's unexpressed needs and wants. But this expectation isn't just unreasonable, it's a recipe for perpetual disappointment. No matter how deeply we love someone, we cannot access their thoughts. We cannot know what they need unless they tell us. Even the most attentive, empathetic partner will inevitably miss cues, misinterpret signals, or fail to anticipate needs. That's not a failure of love. It's the reality of being separate individuals with our own perspectives and experiences. When someone expects you to know what they want without communication, they're setting up a no-win situation. Either you'll constantly fail to meet unstated expectations, creating a narrative that you don't care enough, or you'll exhaust yourself trying to anticipate needs that may change from one moment to the next, creating resentment and burnout. This expectation often stems from idealized notions of romance, the belief that true love means complete understanding without effort. But real, sustainable love isn't magical mind reading, it's intentional communication. It's the courage to voice needs clearly and the willingness to listen attentively when others express theirs. I remember working with a man who described the constant anxiety of trying to anticipate his partner's unstated expectations. It's like walking through a minefield, he said. I never know when I'll step wrong and trigger disappointment or anger. The relationship had become a guessing game he couldn't win, with rules that changed without notice. The toll on his mental health was devastating. The woman who is right for you will understand that loving someone doesn't grant telepathic abilities. She'll recognize that clear communication is an act of care, that expressing needs directly is giving you the opportunity to meet them, not burdening you with them. She'll be your partner in building understanding, not your examiner in an impossible test. Our fifth and final warning sign appears when a woman tells you, you'll never find anyone who loves you like I do. This statement, often delivered as a declaration of unique devotion, is actually one of the most insidious forms of emotional manipulation. It's designed to instill fear. Fear that your options are limited, that this relationship, however troubled, is the best you can hope for. It undermines your sense of worth and plants the seed that without this person, you're destined for loneliness or lesser connections. This statement is particularly dangerous because it masquerades as affirmation. It sounds like a testament to the depth of someone's feelings, but examine it closely. Embedded within is the suggestion that you are fundamentally unlovable to others, that this person is making an exception in loving you, one that no one else would make. When someone truly loves you, they want you to feel secure in your worth. They don't need to convince you that you have no alternatives. They don't frame their love as your only option, but as their cherished choice. True love empowers. It doesn't diminish. I've witnessed the devastating impact of this type of statement on people's self-perception. One man I counseled stayed in an emotionally abusive relationship for 15 years because his partner had convinced him that his intellectual disability meant no one else would ever accept or desire him. He believed this narrative so completely that even when the relationship ended, it took years of healing before he could recognize his inherent worthiness of healthy love. The woman who is right for you will never use her love as a threat or a trap. She won't position herself as your only possibility for connection. Instead, she'll recognize that love is a choice you both make freely, day after day. not because you lack options, but because you actively choose each other among all possibilities. Now, these 5 statements aren't comprehensive. They don't capture every possible warning sign in a relationship, but they represent patterns I've observed repeatedly in partnerships that ultimately caused more harm than good. They reflect fundamental issues with self-awareness, communication, expectations, and respect, cornerstones of any healthy relationship. As I share these insights, I want to acknowledge something important. Most of us have probably said or thought something similar to these statements at some point in our lives. Making one of these comments in a moment of insecurity or frustration doesn't automatically make someone toxic or unworthy of love. We're all works in progress, learning and growing through our relationships. The key difference lies in pattern versus isolated incident, in rigidity versus openness to change. There's a world of difference between someone who momentarily expresses an unrealistic expectation but is open to discussing it, and someone who consistently maintains these attitudes as fundamental to how they view relationship. I also want to be clear that walking away doesn't always mean ending the relationship immediately. Sometimes walking away means stepping back emotionally to evaluate whether the relationship dynamics are healthy for you. It might mean setting clearer boundaries, expressing your concerns directly, or seeking the support of a qualified relationship counselor. But in some cases, walking away does mean exactly that, removing yourself from a situation that is diminishing rather than enhancing your life. And that decision, while painful, can be an act of self-respect and clarity about what you truly deserve. I remember the first time I had to walk away from a relationship that wasn't serving my highest good. The woman I was with exhibited several of these warning signs, but I ignored them because I was afraid of being alone, afraid of starting over, afraid that maybe this was as good as it got. I stayed far longer than I should have, making excuses, minimizing problems, trying to fix what wasn't mine to fix. The decision to leave wasn't dramatic. There was no explosive argument, no single unforgivable act. It was simply the quiet realization one morning that I was pouring myself into a relationship that was draining rather than filling me, that I was compromising my core values to maintain a connection that wasn't helping either of us become our best selves. Walking away was terrifying, but on the other side of that fear was freedom. The freedom to rediscover who I was outside of trying to meet impossible expectations. The freedom to establish what I truly wanted in a partnership. The freedom to wait for something genuine rather than clinging to something familiar. What I've learned through both personal experience and years of counseling others is that there is tremendous power in recognizing patterns early, in being honest with yourself about the signals you're receiving, even when those signals contradict what you wish were true. The sooner you acknowledge relationship dynamics that aren't serving you, the less time you'll spend trying to force connections that aren't aligned with your highest good. Many people stay in unfulfilling or unhealthy relationships not because they don't see the problems, but because they've convinced themselves that these problems are standard, that all relationships are this difficult, this draining, this confusing. But that's simply not true. While every relationship faces challenges, healthy partnerships energize more than they deplete. They bring clarity more than confusion. They expand your sense of possibility rather than contracting it. The right relationship won't require you to shrink yourself, to constantly prove your worth, to walk on eggshells, to accept blame for things outside your control, or to believe that this is your only chance at connection. The right relationship will feel like room to breathe, like being truly seen, like growing together toward your best selves.